Hey guys, I've gotten quite a few requests on going over map channels, so I'm doing a video tutorial that I can post online so that you can go back and reference it when you need to. Map channels allows us to have an object that has different UV layouts on the same object. Like each face will have a separate layout and can be laid out differently for different textures. So everything I think is best explained visually, so I'm going to go forward and start working on it so we can see the advantages of using map channels. So I just made an editable poly, and the first thing I'm going to do is go down to my modifier list and go down to my unwrap. I'm going to add an unwrap UVW on there. And what we're going to be playing with today is the channels and the map channel. So right now it's on 1 by default, and that is perfectly fine for the first one. So I'm going to go into edit, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the checker pattern and go to options, preferences, and turn off that grid. I like working in plain gray space. I'm going to push 3 to select faces, and then Control A so that I select all of them. And I'm going to go to mapping, flatten mapping. Normally I don't really use flatten mapping unless I'm doing really simple objects, and then I go back and I have to do a lot of tweaking. But for right now, what we're doing, this is fine to use. So, alright, so nothing new here, just an unwrap. So I'm going to go back to my modifier list again, and I'm going to add a second unwrap on there. Now because I unwrapped the first one, when I go into my second UV unwrap, you can see that it's laid out the same as the first one. So again, I'm just going to turn off that grid. And what we're going to change down here is we're going to go to the parameters, and we're going to change the map channel to 2. So now what's going to happen is if I go into face mode and I move these faces around, this is what map channel 2 looks like. But if I go back to map channel 1, I'm just going to hit hold yes, because it's just warning me that the topology, things that are underneath will affect the things on top. And again, that's fine for what we're doing right now. I just hit hold. If I go back to that first unwrap, it still has them all laid out the same way that the flat mapping just laid them out. Do you see the difference? So map channel 1 looks like this, and map channel 2 still looks like this. So that's kind of the basis of what we're doing today. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Photoshop, and this is going to be my logo that I'm going to add as my second texture. I wound up doing the mask until the tutorial so that I could just show you a really quick way to create a quick mask. This is different than an alpha because it's not going to be reading an alpha mask within the textures material. The material that we're going to be using works with a separate mask, so again, you'll see that when we go back into Max. But for right now, I need to create a mask channel that will wind up masking out all this blue and white, and just allow us to have our texture, our sticker. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into channels, and what I'm looking for here is what's the closest to the selection that I want to make. So if I go to the red, if we look at the color, you can see that I want this yellow. But if we go to the red channel and I control click the preview, it makes a selection for me. And I can see that in my selection, it's not selecting that yellow, the yellow part. It's leaving it unselected, and it's selecting the BAM and the outline. So that's not really what I want. I want something that's going to really select the whole thing. So I think that the blue does that really well. The green also would give me a selection that probably ignores that part. So I'm going to go into my blue channel, and I'm going to control select the preview, and it does. It allows me to have this entire area. So I'm going to make a new channel, just because I'll explain why I'm using an alpha for right now in a moment. But when I make a new alpha, it still keeps the selection that I had. Because the marching or dancing ants are on the outside, I know that this part is selected and not this part. So I'm going to Shift Control I to inverse my selection, and then I'm going to hit Shift F5 to fill my foreground color, which is white. So now we filled in white in our alpha channel. But as you can see, this is not exactly what we want. If you're familiar with masks or alpha channels, you know that you really want something that's, not all the time, but for this particular instance, you want something that's black and white, because you want to be able to see that whole sticker and have all the blue behind it gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels, which is why I'm using an alpha channel and not a separate layer for right now, because the levels for some reason work better with the alpha channel than they were working with the layers. So I'm going to adjust this so that my darks get darker and my brights get brighter. So now you can see it's more of a solid cutout, right? But again, because we don't want an alpha channel, I'm going to Control A to select all, and I'm going to copy and paste this onto a new layer and get rid of that alpha channel. And again, the reason that I did that was just because when I was putting it on as another layer, the levels weren't working properly. They weren't working as clean as they were on the alpha channel. So now I'm going to save this as a targa. I'll name it BAM Mask. And again, I can save it 24-bit because I'm not using the alpha. And I'll go back into 3D Studio Max. And so now I have my textures set up. So now we're ready to actually apply them and work within the material editor. I'm going to open my material editor, which is up here, or you can push M. And in my material, I'm going to switch the standard to a blend. I'm going to discard my old material just so I know that I'm working on a clean slate. And the blend parameters come up. So the way that this works is that there's a material 1, material 2, and a mask. As I was saying, this is why we created the black and white mask instead of an alpha channel. The other option that they have is a mix amount, which we're not going to really be using for this particular tutorial, but what the mix amount does is it takes material 1 and material 2 and basically overlays them. So if the mix amount is 0, material 1 would be 100%, material 2 is at 0%, and if the mix amount was 50, then material 1 would be 50% and material 2 would be 50%. So it works more like an overlay. But again, that's not what we're working with. We're going to be working with the mask. So for material 1, the first thing I'm going to do is rename it, because when you start working with a lot of materials, a lot of objects, you want to make sure that you're practicing the good habit of naming everything. I know this says box 01. I should have named it something else, but it really is just a box for right now. So I renamed that concrete, and I'm going to go into my diffuse, go into the options, select bitmap, and I'm going to go to my, I have a concrete texture. I'm going to throw the concrete texture on there. If you hit this button, show standard map in viewport, that allows me to see the texture in the viewport. And you can see in here it says map channel 1. So again, we're going to leave that alone, leave that at the default for the concrete. And I would like a little more bump on that texture, so I'm going to go drop down the maps, go to bump, and I'm just going to add another layer in there so that now I have just a little bit of texture. Oh wow, that's blown out. Hold on one second.